Thank you. I am so excited to be here. Hello, everybody. This is great company. I use Stoicism to make arguments in contemporary ethics. So I want to make a case for Stoic ethics being a practical way to discover what beauty is, which is a very different approach than taking what the ancients said about beauty in particular and fitting that into what we use of Stoic ethics today. But if we're talking about beauty, I'm hoping it's okay. I can set the stage with Plato because it's irresistible. And he pretty memorably tells us what happens to us when we're in the presence of physical beauty in a person. As they get closer to us, our eyes get dazzled. We start thinking in terms of ultimates and eternity. We use superlatives like most beautiful I've ever seen or in the world. And in that same mind, the person gets put up on a pedestal, not for use, but for admiration. And Plato suggests that we're a little bit afraid of great beauty and that we're tormented over this. So we feel overwhelming desire for the beautiful person, but that is forced down, like aggressively by our other parts, and not just once, but until that lower part learns its lesson. And as far as this kind of painful yearning, I just think this case is interesting and is useful as soon as I get to the Stoics in a second. It's from a reporter at the New Yorker who was doing a story on plastic surgery. So she went to a bunch of surgeons' offices and they couldn't help but tell her what they could fix about her face. And here's what she wrote. I had thought that I was researching the subject at a logical distance, that I could inhabit the point of view of an ideal millennial client, someone who wanted to enhance, not fix herself, who was ambitious and pragmatic. But I left with a very specific feeling, a kind of bottomless need that I associated with early adolescence. So if you will think back to your middle school years, if you had posters up of pop stars, or even if you treated a few of your classmates like pop stars, in awe of the glamour, for Plato, those sorts of innocent crushes are exactly as they should be. So it's a sign, a very good sign, that we were designed to yearn for greater things all our lives. And the yearning is what motivates us, as he puts it, to become like God. So in other words, your Justin Bieber poster was just a vessel. And Plato knows that we will realize we can't be sustained by mystique and physical beauty. So we shift our yearning from pop stars to beautiful persons, to beautiful souls, to beautiful laws and institutions, to the beauty of knowledge. And then if you're philosophical enough, it's like a new sun has emerged and you see beauty itself, truth and beauty itself. But he knows things usually go wrong and we fail to become philosophers and get stuck at a very low level, confused, unsatisfied, bitter. It's impressive to think of all the insults that Plato enables us, because any adult fan or anyone who enjoys rating the physical beauty of others like an expert is really not doing well on a Platonic account and not doing well on a Stoic account either. So what they share in common is that beauty is a gift and a sign, but it can also be a trap that we fall in and a way to completely miss our lives. So do the Stoics help with this? And I think they do in several ways. So the first way I think the Stoic helps will be familiar to you all, I'm sure, because I know you know the lines about food and the other things they deflate. It's not a delicious steak. It's just cut muscle from a dead cow. A mansion is just a roof and a floor. And, these things don't make us popular, but I figure the Stoics would invoke the same deflationary approach with beauty. So it's called contemptuous expression, I think, as the modern exercise, but it's just seeing things less as conclusions and more as their parts, or looking at the origin of them. So with personal beauty, I think a Stoic would make comments like these, which aren't that unusual, but things like, yes, she has nice elbows, or I think she dyes her hair, or yeah, those are hair plugs, or he's got to be taking steroids. I love his arms. What great hair. Is that a filter? Yeah, the purple purse will match. I think the Stoics are going to encourage us to resist any excited fantasy and replace it with plain observation. But I know that is no surprise to anyone. A quiz on what the Stoics think about beauty would give those answers. What's confusing and what's hard to explain, and what I have been getting help with all day and can't wait for more about, is that the Stoics still see and pursue beauty. So unlike Plato, they don't expect us to mainline it through our eyeballs. We get an impression and then we can assent or not. We're not automatically attracted to all beautiful things. They don't automatically make us go out of our minds. That's only when we associate bad beliefs with beauty. So I guess in sum, beauty doesn't always have to cause yearning, and yet you don't have to deny its beauty either to resist its power if you think like a Stoic. And I do feel like that's a pretty helpful package. I mean, of course, it's probably easier said than done, but it does seem to be a good midway position between Plato's, it's a defeatist view, his view really, but his hyped up defeatist view, and a cynical approach. So let me move to benefit 2 of a Stoic approach. And I will be mentioning our special Stoic terms, which also got a nice introduction earlier. I hope it doesn't hurt to review, but I call this part the purple purse. So if you are going to interview to get a job in philosophy and you carry a purple purse, you need to be ready, because probably in that department are some ancient scholars, and probably they're going to tease you and say, how in the world could a Stoic carry a purple purse? And then, because if you remember, I said you got ready, you know to say, I just selected it. And then you're speaking Stoic code, the purple purse is reluctantly approved, and you get the job. Now, if you're already in the habit of using the word selected for what you do with indifference, I'm just going to try and back you on that. But if you're not, I'm going to try and make a case. It's just a little bit of technical language. It's supposed to convey to the agent, to you, and to those around you who know the code, that you can both care and not care about the purse, that you can take it seriously and not take it seriously, to use coinage a scholar has recently coined, take it seriously and not take it seriously. You cared enough to pick it out, to find it before you leave. You don't care enough to steal or lie for it. And, let's be Stoic. You don't even care enough to be visibly upset if it's stolen. The purse has some positive value, but you say select rather than choose, to emphasize that all you would really ever choose is to be moral. As Julia Annis puts it, because the Stoics limit good to virtue, they want to make sure we don't speak too loosely to suggest that anything might match the good of virtue, if we call it good too. So that's why we introduced the idea of calling purses indifference, and then some are preferred indifference and some are dispreferred. And some Stoics actually say virtue just is selecting between indifference properly, figuring out which are preferred and which are dispreferred. Any good behavior would be doing that. That's all virtue is, a kind of tidy definition. But it's helpful to remember also that indifference are, of course, it doesn't mean that they aren't necessary to our lives. They aren't indifferent to health or wealth or anything. They just aren't the same as your virtuous choice. I also want to emphasize that the Stoics probably shouldn't be generalized about in a modern context, so that they sound like consequentialists about things like, I guess, the purse or practical rationality. So I just want to take this opportunity to point out that a consequentialist would be looking to see that I chose the best purse, so the purse that does the least social harm, all things considered. And that can sound so neutral. And, I see people using that language describing Stoicism sometimes, but that is a real contrast to what it seems to me Stoics expect of us. And it would introduce a lot of anxiety, endless recalculation. I just don't think it's what the Stoics have in mind. But they do want us to focus on what we can say. So sayables, I love that expression. The things we say about what we're doing and in the moment, not with all the information you'd need if you were doing a consequentialist analysis and not if you were in an idealized situation. To focus on what we can say is something we can do and defend along with other things we say. And that is so great. It's what practical rationality is made of. And practical rationality is what makes Stoicism so distinctive and explains, I think, why the complicated terminology is worth it, the awkward terminology. I mean, it won't make us popular, but I do think it'll help with beauty, the problems of beauty. So Epictetus says some lovely things about problems with beauty. He says, don't say it's nothing. It's clearly there. Trying to pretend you don't see like gradations in beauty is so silly. No one will believe you. And it also shows a lack of gratitude when beauty is a gift to us all. And then he's also addressing non-cynics a moment later. Don't be so afraid of it. Don't be a coward. You can love beauty and despise beauty, as he puts it. You don't need to be carried away or placed within its power. Like, don't let Plato scare you. The Stoics don't need us to use something like akin to physical force on an animal to keep our lustful sides under control. We can do that with words and reason, and so can many people, as someone might want to point out to Plato. So, just saying he's married, just saying she's 17, that's enough. Point for the Stoics. What did Epictetus mean to say despise beauty? Well, I think the point might be that we do all sorts of things that ruin beauty. Have kids is example number one. Break a nail, miss workouts to help somebody else, or if you become sick or disabled, saving someone in a fire might risk your beauty. We also might need to overcorrect if we choose too often on the basis of beauty and not something else. I mean, this sounds trivial in comparison to like heroic examples, but people do go bankrupt buying things. So you have to be careful to not think choosing beautiful things will make you happy. Ignore the advertising. There are just two more things I think a Stoic might want us to realize that I want to catch with this examination of the Stoic account. For one, it's not very generous to value people for their beauty, and people who want to be beautiful act like that's something other than it is. I think our experts are people who are extraordinarily beautiful, and it is a painful thing to be liked in part because you're beautiful. And then for two, we do hold ourselves morally responsible for things we find beautiful. So if you don't find your baby beautiful, or your teenager when their face is full of pimples, or your parents in very, very old age, there's something wrong. And there's something other than the initial aesthetic appreciation that's behind those transitions, which I think are very normal and standard. So I'm just going to suggest there are a few ways a Stoic could approach beauty. So we could be humble about beauty, where we don't impose any one account of aesthetics. We could be slightly cynical, and we could have counterintuitive ideas. I mean, I'm thinking of like Diogenes saying the most beautiful thing is frank, bold, free speech. I think we could argue you need to see beauty in all of humanity, which has already been argued today. I think we could be consumers for fit, charm, and color, purple purses. I think we could pursue decorum, if that's not the same thing. And I think it's not, because manners would be included. And I think beauty can help us reinforce the need for virtue. So the last one maybe is the hardest sell, maybe not for this crowd, but that's a hard sell. I like to say how it would work in the most simple of detail, and I have a few reasons for that. One may not be relevant to everyone, but in the fields of moral education, moral psychology, kind of ethical theory generally, the idea of phronesis is under new attack. New attack. And a very good philosopher has gathered together all the descriptions he could find of phronesis. Now, this is in Aristotelian virtue ethics, just like by the numbers. But it is a very embarrassing list, because the descriptions are vague, kind of like overly ambitious. It ends up kind of looking like, to him, it looks like anything you'd want in your ethical account can just be thrown underneath the heading of phronesis. And then we're supposed to trust that we have this ability to do these things, case closed. So he's starting to argue there's not even such a thing as phronesis, even though he believes there are virtues. But I think Stoics, would never want to, can never even imagine losing the role of phronesis. So, that's our proclivity for thinking and acting consistently so that we can decide ethical issues. We do that in an informal way, unsystematically, but it works. And we also do it with sensitivity to coherence, consistency, and contradiction. I'm quoting Larry Becker at the end there. There are contemporary virtue ethicists, developing their own account of phronesis in their own words. Irene McMullen has a wonderful new account. Dan Russell, in his work on virtue ethics, really emphasizes that this is not a mysterious process. It's just a settled ability that we can understand on its own terms and compare with familiar everyday skills. And so another caution is that I don't want phronesis to seem bland or banal or even not particular to Stoicism, but I also don't want it to seem too precious. So let me give an example and then suggest we could use this with beauty. The example is just from Epictetus. A father is unable to visit his sick daughter because he loves her too much. That's what he believes. How do you talk him down? Well, there's a couple steps. This is how simple it could be. The first step would be, is love for your daughter a good? Yes. Okay. So we're on one page there. The second step is to see if he's using the word love in the same way he does at other times. It's like, does the mother not love the daughter because she is hanging in there with the ill daughter? Okay, he's starting to realize there's some inconsistency here. The third step, what would you want if you were the daughter? How would love be expressed to you if you imagined yourself in that position? And then the fourth step is to check your motivations. It's doubtful that love is really what's motivating this frightened father. He is frightened, he admits. Finally, what beliefs do you have to revise to get you to do the right thing? It's very simple, a series of steps. We can describe it as consistency, harmony, or lack of conflict, but people might not understand what we mean. It's what brings about virtue, a situation where our motivations have been organized by us so that they don't conflict and support each other. It's something that can happen if we use practical rationality over and over again. So let me just end with how this might apply to beauty. So what you would do is begin with a sayable. So what would the sayable be? Something like, beautiful people get ahead, or to be admired, you must be beautiful. So the first step is putting that in sentence form. That's a hassle. We don't like to do that. So you're already being pretty deliberate about this. You may not have internalized that norm. It may be what Larry Becker calls an alien norm. It just could be something from the culture, but you think about the tensions that could be introduced if you did adopt or endorse that idea. Only beautiful people get ahead. Would that cause any of these things? A lack of closeness with others, insecurity, dissatisfaction, perfectionism, comparisons, fear of aging, lack of any kind of discernible gain. If those things seem likely to happen if you follow that norm, if that sayable were an endorsed norm for you, then you're supposed to go back and revise and figure out what instead the role of beauty could be in our lives. You'd imagine how this would apply to other people, and you would go back and revise beliefs that would support that norm that doesn't seem viable or does seem viable. And then once you find something workable, you go ahead and test it. So what are you looking for? You're looking for something you can support, believe, and be motivated by, that doesn't make you feel like you have endless need, that doesn't make you compare yourself to others, that allows you to enjoy beauty, to see it, to recognize it, maybe to recognize more of it, experience joy at seeing it, to be able to find beautiful what you want to find beautiful, to not make yourself your own beauty project, to get self-esteem from your character and action, to love others for their character and action. And we should be able to, with this process, put in any sayable we can come up with. I have a list of ones I'm trying out. I'd like to only select for beauty. I'd like to see the beauty in everyone, even people I don't like. I don't want to be attached to my beautiful possessions. I don't want to get the wrong impression from them. I don't want other people to get the wrong impression from beautiful possessions I have. I don't want to be a coward about ugliness or aging or beauty. I don't want to be ashamed of myself. I want to strive to see honorable actions, even ones that involve quite a bit of loss, as beautiful, a criteria from the ancient Stoics, I think. And then finally, that we could find all of nature beautiful, which seems very ambitious, but I think that's okay. Thank you guys so much. It's really exciting to be doing philosophy publicly, and I am so grateful for the experience.
Thank you, Jennifer. Everyone in the chat, a round of applause. Goodness, you got our minds working there, Jennifer, with all the sayables. I'm making lists and that. I was wondering in the chat, everyone, I think if anyone has a little problem, maybe we might even have some time just to work through the sayables for your specific problem. I just want to quickly ask something that Francis questioned, and I'll wait for everyone in the chat to pop in. Francis Gasparini said, I'm not clear how selecting between indifference is virtuous or leads to virtue.
Yeah, so it's just it's a description of the same thing, I guess, we more commonly say about virtue. So if you can imagine any case of virtue, letting a little old lady go in front of you in a line, that could be described as selecting between indifference, because it didn't really matter that you got there first, at the counter. That doesn't really matter. And so if you had been thinking it mattered, you were rating indifference wrong. And that's even giving you the compliment, like, oh, you know what virtue is. Virtue wasn't like at stake in this decision other than choosing the wrong indifferent.
Yeah.
If that helps.
Yeah,
but it's
yeah. Thanks, Francis, for the question. I'm just looking in the chat to see if anyone's got a fear of beauty or not being beautiful, so that we can solve that one. But I think for me, the aging one kind of speaks to me. Can we just work through what would my sayables be? So
yeah, I mean, I think
aging and go ahead.
It's wrong and embarrassing. Is that a fair? It's humiliating. It
right.
Happens to us. I mean, it's it feels really personal, and the Stoics would need to talk us out of those common beliefs about it. It can't be those things. Does that make sense? It just wouldn't. Not with what we know about life, not with how we value older people, not with how our days go.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
And that makes sense. And so you just have a list. You literally you read that list to us, didn't you? You just read this list. And so you make a list, and you then just go over it and meditate it with you every day, or?
Oh, no, I don't know. I'm not even close.
I'm not saying you per se, but should we?
That would be the process of being practically rational, which I do think it's very important we start to illustrate it, because we throw out the term, and now contemporary ethicists are attacking us for being so vague, as if we're just blowing smoke or hand waving. But in some of the ancient examples, it's just as simple as can be. And it also has this wonderful feature where, like in the example with the father, you can understand someone's poor practical reasoning from the outside. So it's not the case that it's just this internal process. I mean, anyone who benefits from therapy, or anyone who's a good friend, we've worked people through these processes. And then sometimes the best you can do is just say where someone got stuck. Like, the reason he does that is because he believes, and we might know he did not finish the process of reasoning practically, or phronesis.
Yeah. Thanks, Jennifer. I can see a number of sayables filling the chat. Beauty doesn't only refer to aesthetics. Aging need not be negative. We can develop wisdom with experience. Eric has a question for you. How will the concept of beauty change once, thanks to biotechnology, we are able to indefinitely remain biologically young and reverse aging?
Yeah, I mean, I haven't thought deeply about that, but because how we look isn't indifferent, I feel like it causes no crisis for a Stoic. So if we all, were filtered all the time, or could pick our avatar, that doesn't make our lives easier. So that was an indifferent anyway. So that would be a horrible thing for people who stake a lot on beauty or have these ideas about merit and beauty. But yeah, I feel like Stoicism could be very flexible with a future like that.
Yeah. Can you just explain to me one thing? We do have some time. And I think someone mentioned this in the chat, and I'm formulating a question around that. You said that one response would be like to care and not care. Okay. Is that the same as moderation?
To care and not care, is it the same as I don't think it's the same as moderation, even though I'm not very good. I really do focus on practical rationality at the expense of thinking about what the particular virtues guide us to do. So could someone be immoderate and also be capable of detaching, like, from their wealth or their fame or their power? Yeah, I think so. Okay. That's easy to imagine, right? So it's not as if just being able to understand indifference aren't virtue means that you are, disciplined in every direction, because there might be other beliefs or a lack of beliefs that get you to moderate yourself. Does that sound fair?
Yeah. I'm just going to read a sayable from Tom in the chat. At the age of 6, I told my grandmother wrinkles are a sign of beauty. She insisted I was a genius for the rest of her life. All right, we've got 3 minutes for one more question. I see Eric Ruth has a question. Eric says, how does a beautiful person balance their ego with virtue if they're using their beauty to further a purpose they justify as virtuous? Say an actor using their face to advertise for Stoicism, or if Ryan Holiday stopped writing and started modeling, but did so while espousing Seneca. A better way to put it, is a philosopher's OnlyFans virtuous?
OnlyFans. Okay, well, now I'm out of my depth, but if you just use your beautiful face for business or promotion of something, I don't even think it would have to be Stoicism. I mean, big whoop. This is like the realism, I think. Like, yeah, some people's faces are so attractive, it's unbearable. I mean, just some people are glamorous, beautiful. I mean, it's what I like about Stoicism is you can recognize all of that and how attractive it is to the rest of us, and how much we like to see it, and then that it doesn't have to lead to any harm. It's just like any tool or colors, or I mean, a purple purse. So the Stoic conception doesn't have to make us neurotic or like Puritans. And it's funny how much I think we do import that. Like, a morally serious person would not carry a purse. I mean, you see how gendered that even is. But some of I think the Stoics should be blamed for.
Thanks, Jennifer. Thanks as always for a really interesting deep dive into seeing this philosophy. Very, very practical. Really enjoyed that.